Terrifying secrets revealed. Seven Sinister Rules of the haunted Appalachian Mountains. Park Ranger Rachel felt the chill creep down her spine as she stood at the entrance of the Appalachian Mountains Park. It was beautiful, too beautiful. Nothing could mask the sense of dread that had been brewing since their arrival. Whispers of the Seven Sinister Rules filled the air, warnings from townsfolk hunched over their coffee cups, voices low as if sharing a secret recipe of folklore and fear. She brushed it off, attributing it to mountain superstitions and local color, but something nagged at her. The first rule was simple: don't wander off the trails. It seemed harmless, common sense. But the locals delivered it with an eerie seriousness, eyes darting to the trees as if expecting something to emerge from the shadows. Rachel shook her head. She had dealt with enough challenges in her life. She wouldn't let ghost stories scare her. Distraction came in the form of her son, Ethan, a spirited 16-year-old with a skateboard and a knack for wandering. "Mom, look," he called, his voice slicing through her thoughts. When she turned as if on cue, the trees whispered to her with rustling leaves. She felt something watching, the weight of the forest heavy against her shoulders. "What is it?" Rachel approached, her heart hammering, a memory swirling of dark tales and missing rangers. When the sun dipped below the horizon, night draped its cloak over the park. Shadows danced, eerie and elongated, as they made their way back to the ranger station. The air was thick with tension. Ethan fumbled with a flashlight switched on and off, the beam flickering like the pulse of her nerves. "These notes are freaky, Mom," he murmured, excitement tangled with a hint of trepidation. Before she could respond, a harsh tussle of wind rattled the trees. Lost in the intrigue of her son's discovery, Rachel half listened as Ethan recited the chilling riddles from the notes. Each rule grew darker, laced with warnings, inviting dread into their new life. "Stay close. The forest doesn't forget." "Mom," he insisted, eyes wide with worry and wonder. The tension clung to them like stubborn fog. Rachel waved it off, chuckling nervously. "It's just superstition," she reassured him. But deep down, a warning clanged in the back of her mind. This was no ordinary job. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Days passed, tension mounting as Rachel settled into her role. Yet each interaction with the locals was laden with words unspoken. Their eyes filled with sympathy but also fear. Ethan tested the limits of the forest boundaries, ever curious. One afternoon, during an innocent hike, Rachel felt an unsettling shift in the atmosphere. "Ethan?" she called, but the echo returned devoid of his voice. A deep panic seized her chest. Time stretched as she searched. Shadows surged, flitting just out of sight, disturbing the brush with unheard whispers. Without warning, her world twisted when Ethan slipped into the depths of the trees. The air thickened, choking her as she raced forward, heart pounding violently. The forest felt alive, pulsating with ancient energy. When she stumbled upon a group of townsfolk by a crackling fire, their eyes baked in fear offered no comfort. They warned of a ranger, someone she thought she could trust, whose connection to the dark tales was more than folklore. Panic seized Rachel. Her instincts screamed. This was bigger than her, a battle against something twisted and unseen. As she fought her way through the mounting shadows, she heard a voice, chillingly familiar. "Mom?" But the echo reverberated wrong, a distorted call that sent her heart racing. What lay ahead in the blackened woods? Would she uncover the sinister truth behind the Seven Sinister Rules? Or would this be the last time she felt her son's presence? Fueled by desperation, Rachel stepped further into the darkness, trembling with dread and determination, aware all too well that the worst was yet to come. Rachel plunged deeper into the thickening darkness, the branches clawing at her clothes like fingers reaching for a grip. Each crunching step echoed into the void, swallowed by the heavy silence around her. The air grew electric, tinged with the sharp scent of pine and something far more sinister. She strained her ears, grasping for clarity in the weighty gloom, but all she found was an ominous whisper of rustling leaves, a language of the trees she didn't speak. "Ethan?" Her voice faltered, trembling on the cusp of desperation. It felt wrong, not like a mother calling for her son, more like a sacrificial offering in a place that demanded penance. She pressed on, heart pounding against her ribcage, a relentless tattoo that drowned out the unsettling symphony of the forest. Another echo came, unmistakably his, "Mom." Panic tightened her throat, but it was too far, too faint, as if the forest itself were toying with her, leading her on a twisted game of hide and seek. Rushing forward, she broke into a clearing illuminated by an eerie glow. She stopped, her breath hitching. In the center of the clearing stood a bizarre arrangement of stones, ancient and smothered in twisted vines, as if they were growing from the earth itself. A chill ran through her. The markings on those stones felt primordial, runes carved by hands long forgotten, warning her to turn back. She stepped closer, drawn in like a moth to a flame, when the ground trembled beneath her feet. "Mom!" Ethan's voice erupted again, more frantic this time. The sound shot through Rachel, electrifying her resolve. She couldn't stop now. She would tear apart this dark curtain if she had to. The woods thickened again, branches twisting overhead like the fingers of the damned. She fought through the maze, each gust of wind filled with unspoken threats. Just ahead, she spotted movement. Her heart surged. "Ethan!" A figure darted between the trees, a flash of familiar clothing. Rachel chased after it, but the more she ran, the more disoriented she became. Trees seemed to shift, paths diverged that had once been straight. Shadows loomed near, closer than they should have been. They flickered and melded, their forms twisting into shapes that felt malicious, mid-laughter at her frantic state. Then she stumbled, almost falling over an unseen root. In that moment, she caught a glint of metal in the darkness, the glimmer of something trapped beneath the leaves. She knelt down, brushing away the debris, revealing a small, rusted ranger badge, its emblem faded by time. Her stomach twisted. This belonged to someone who had been lost, perhaps another ranger ensnared by the forest. Underneath the badge was a crumpled piece of paper, its edges gnawed away as if some creature had feasted on it. She unfolded it, heart racing as she read the frantic scrawl. "Beware the whispering woods. Follow them and you'll think you know the way, until the path shifts beneath you." Rachel's heart dropped. "Ethan!" She called again, now realizing the terrifying possibility. It wasn't just her son that could vanish in this place. It was anyone who dared take a step beyond the trails. A sudden shudder rippled through the ground, and the forest hushed, all noise snuffed out like a candle. Rachel's breath hitched. The trees stopped rustling. Shadows thickened, closing in. She turned, the panic blaring in her mind, closing her throat, when she saw it mounting gloom, forming a figure just at the edge of the clearing. "What have you done?" A voice whispered, low and gravelly. All around, the air froze, and the weight of 1,000 unseen eyes bore down on her. Rachel's grip tightened around the badge, the heaviness of dread crushing her chest. Would she have the strength to confront whatever hunted in the dark? Taking a step back, she jittered, heel digging into the ground. It wasn't over this torment would only escalate, spiraling into madness before dawn. As the forest whispered in an ancient tongue, Rachel knew one thing for certain. She had to find Ethan before the woods claimed them both. With a heart full of dread but driven by fierce determination, she plunged deeper into the twisting shadows. But this haunting was far from finished. What awaited her was chilling beyond comprehension, and the forest wasn't finished with its cruel game yet. Would she uncover Ethan's fate, or become just another whisper in the dark? Rachel forced herself to move, every step heavy with dread. She couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, the air thickening with a tension that was almost palpable. Shadows seemed to reach out for her, wanting to encase her in their darkness. "Ethan!" She called again, the sound twisting and fading, absorbed by the forest's cruel embrace. The trees felt alive, shifting slightly as if adjusting their shapes, blocking her way. A cold sweat trickled down her back, pooling between her shoulder blades. She fought against the urge to scream, to let out all the terror that clutched at her throat. Ahead, her heart lurched. Another silhouette flickered at the edge of her vision. Ethan. She darted towards it, hope igniting. Each branch snapped underfoot, an intrusion into the maddening silence. It darted back, just out of reach. Without knowing why, panic gripped her tighter. Please, come back. But it vanished, swallowed by the darkness. She faltered, an icy breath escaping her lips. I'm not leaving without you. Rachel pressed on, suddenly aware of whispers running through the leaves. They were unintelligible at first, but soon morphed into a singular voice, eerie and melodic. Turn back. Turn back. Each syllable felt like fingers playing with the fibers of her being, teasing and taunting. The smell of damp earth mingled with a rot, filling her lungs, choking her resolve. Ethan. The ground shifted. Stones erupted around her feet, splinters of wood lining the earth like broken promises. The clearing morphed into something grotesque, roots writhing like serpents. Rachel stumbled, nearly falling again, the forest spinning, the very air electric with menace. Mom! The voice. It sounded closer now. Her heart quickened at the familiar call. She didn't waste a moment. She surged forward, barreling through the thorny underbrush, every instinct telling her she had to reach him. I'm coming. But the whispers intensified, a cacophony of voices swelling around her. Do not follow. Turn back. She shouted back into the dark, her voice cracking. Shut up. You don't own me. The belligerence gave her a short burst of energy. She pressed on, branches vigorous against her arms, tearing at her skin. Each scratch felt like a pact made with the forest, a promise of surrender. She broke free into yet another clearing, more luminous than the last, yet it was no beacon of hope. Instead, what lay before her threw her into further despair. Bones, scattered remnants of those who had ventured here before her, the very earth saturated with eerie silence filled with their haunting histories. At the center, an altar crafted from stone, a morbid dedication of sorts, and on it lay something covered by a frayed cloth. Rachel's stomach twisted as she approached, her breath hitching. Her fingers trembled as she lifted the fabric, revealing a series of engravings that resonated with each pulse of her heart. The runes burned at her touch. Images danced before her mind, each one a warning of darkness that swirled within this forest. She could almost hear their warnings, feel their desperation to escape. The air shifted again, coalescing into a figure behind her. No, she gasped, spinning, dread coiling tight. As she faced the specter, the chilling wind whispered through her hair. The figure wore the remnants of a uniform, the tattered badge reflecting a light that wasn't there. Its eyes bore into her, a depth of sorrow mixed with something far more terrifying. The woods demand tribute, Rachel. The voice echoed, fractured and pained. It is hungry. The echoes of the lost speak, and they know your name. Terror surged through her, but she stood rooted, aware that she could no longer run. She had to know if Ethan was among those lost, if she was destined to join them. What did you do to my son? The question trembled on her lips, an invitation for the forest to answer. But the figure merely watched, a harbinger of fate, an ominous hint of the end. The darkness pulsated, and around her the whispers surged again, each word laced with something sinister. To find him, you must pay the price. Rachel's heart thundered as she realized the truth echoed behind those fragile words. The forest was alive, craving for more souls to ensnare. Would she pay the price to uncover the fate of her son, or become just another offering to the whispering woods? She felt the ground tremble beneath her again, and the weight of a decision pressed heavily on her. As she contemplated her next move, a second voice pierced the silence. Mom! Hope rekindled for just a moment, but as she turned, the trees contorted, their roots swirling like dark veins around her. She had to decide. Would she listen to the woods, or trust herself? The forest held more secrets than she could ever imagine. What truth would she uncover next, and at what cost? Rachel froze, heart hammering like a wild animal desperate to escape. The echo of her son's voice rang in her ears, clear, urgent, and ever so close. But the darkness seemed to thicken, encircling her tighter, as if the very trees were conspiring against her. The figure the ranger stood ominously still, his hollow eyes boring into her. "Answer me," she shouted, her voice cracking. The words felt feeble against the oppressive silence that followed. "Mom!" The call again, more frantic this time. It propelled Rachel forward, regardless of the dread gripping her. The roots coiled lower, ready to snatch at her ankles. She sidestepped, adrenaline surging through her as she lunged for the shadow of the voice. "Ethan!" A rustle in the underbrush tore her attention away from the chilling specter. A flash of movement, a silhouette darting between the trees. She could almost taste the hope, sweet, addictive, tantalizingly close. "Ethan!" Suddenly, the ground trembled violently, throwing her off balance. She stumbled, catching herself on the gnarly trunk of an ancient tree. The ranger's form hissed with whispered threats. "Leave. It's too late. You will join them." But she was done listening to the darkness. Summoning every ounce of courage, Rachel kicked away from the tree. Not today. Each step was a battle. The eerie whispers crescendoed into wailing as the forest sided with the darkness. "Pay the price. Pay the price." Rachel moved, weaving through the chaotic writhing roots, determined to break beyond whatever curse held this hellish place. Every instinct begged her to turn back, to flee, but Ethan was out there. Desperate, she glanced back over her shoulder. The ranger was no longer there. The dread morphed into wild anxiety as she pressed on, branches raking at her arms, leaving stinging reminders of her trouble ahead. And there it was again, the voice, softer now yet laced with urgency. "Mom! Help! Please! Hold on! I'm coming!" She pushed through the pain, desperation morphing the forest into a labyrinth of shadows and whispers. Her lungs burned as she strained to hear him over the torment of branches. Each footfall sent jolts of fear racing through her. Finally, she stumbled into another clearing, more spacious yet suffocating. The soft glow from a strange light illuminated the area, revealing grotesque figures painted on the trees, each face contorted in horror, melding with the bark. Was this what the forest did to those who fell victim? And then was that him? A small figure hunched by a thicket of brambles. "Ethan!" Rachel rushed forward, but before she could reach him, a piercing scream shattered the night. The sky dimmed instantly, shadows swirling violently as cries of anguish ripped free from the depths of the trees. "Mom! Don't! Stay back!" Ethan's voice startled her, pierced with fear. Rachel faltered, dread freezing her limbs. "What's happening, baby? Don't, please!" The forest is angry. The wind howled around her, shaking the branches like a curse cast upon her soul. She looked from Ethan to the vortex of dark shadows swirling at the edge of the clearing. They felt alive, stretching toward her as if drawn by her very essence. "Please, come with me," he begged, eyes wide, pleading. Rachel could feel the forest shudder, closing in. "We need to leave, Ethan. Now." But just as she reached out, the air stilled. An overwhelming presence loomed behind her, and the shadows rolled forward like a tide. She turned, heart racing, and there stood the ranger again, nearer now, as if summoned by her fear. "Are you ready to pay the price?" he asked, voice chilling, echoing like a distant memory. The moment stretched, anticipation filling the air. Rachel's world seemed to hinge on her answer. In the flickering light, she could see the dark shapes converging, eager to respond to her choice. In that pivotal instant, chaos erupted. The trees writhed as tendrils reached out toward her, snapping and snarling. She yanked Ethan close, the warmth of his little body grounding her just as terror crested around them. What would she do? Would she surrender to the forest's call, or fight for her son's life? Before she could decide, the ground split beneath them, a gaping maw ready to swallow them whole. As they plunged deeper into the earth, Rachel felt the cold grip of dread. There was something waiting below, something that held the answers she sought. But at what cost? Would the truth bring freedom, or further entrapment? The darkness roared, hungry and relentless, beckoning them down. What awaited them at the bottom? And could they escape the forest's insatiable thirst? They fell, the world above fading into nothing but the screech of air as they descended deeper into the earth. Rachel clutched Ethan, feeling his small body tremble against her. The ground softened suddenly, as if they had landed on a carpet instead of cold, hard earth. Darkness crept in, pushing against her senses. She blinked, searching for any sign of light. A dull glow pulsed far ahead, illuminating a passageway that seemed to stretch on forever. "Mom, are we safe?" Ethan's voice quivered, laced with fear. Rachel swallowed hard, shaking her head to clear the fog of terror. "We just need to keep moving," she whispered. "Stay close." The walls were slick with moisture, and shadows danced like phantoms as they moved forward. The eerie glow flickered, unsure. With each step, the air grew heavier and charged with a strange energy, tugging at Rachel's sanity. Were they truly alone down here? "Mom," Ethan whimpered, his voice shrinking into silence. "Just hold on," she urged, pressing forward. Her heart raced, echoing off the walls around them, drowning out the whispers that filigreed her thoughts. "Turn back. You shouldn't be here." Dark shapes skittered along the periphery of illumination, and Rachel felt an ancient dread rising, a whisper of something far older than the trees above. The air stank of decay and mold, an invitation to despair. "Do you hear that?" Ethan's eyes widened, staring back into the darkness behind them. "No," she said too quickly, her skin crawling at the thought of something lurking just out of sight. "Don't look back. Just keep moving." But the sounds grew louder, like footfalls, a hurried skittering that prickled the hairs on her neck. She urged Ethan faster, her hands wrapped around his wrist, guiding him through the gloom. They turned a corner, and the pulse of the glow intensified. Images lined the walls, faces twisted in terror, mouths frozen in silent screams. Rachel froze at the sight of them, all too familiar, each one recounting a tale of their own demise, their empty gazes pleading for release. "Oh God," she gasped, recognizing one face, a mother with a small child. Heart beating wildly, she tore her gaze away and pressed on. "Mom!" Ethan tugged at her shirt, pointing ahead. "Not now," Rachel snapped, a surge of panic flaring inside her. But she turned to see what he was pointing at. In a widening chamber, hundreds of silhouettes watched them, their forms a blur of gray and ink black against the glowing rock. They drifted like smoke, swirling in unison, drawing closer. A low hum filled the air, vibrating in Rachel's chest like an incoming storm. "Is that?" she began, her voice shaking. But the shapes didn't answer. Instead, they moaned words lost in the swell of noise, reaching for her, begging silently for understanding, for escape. "Mom, they're coming!" Ethan screamed. "No!" Rachel yelled, panic cutting through her fear. "Run!" They bolted through the throng, their fear igniting a raw energy. The shadows reached out, brushing against her face with icy fingers as she pushed Ethan ahead of her. "Mom, look out!" he cried just as a figure surged toward them. Cloaked in darkness, a scream tore from Rachel's throat as she felt the presence close behind, closing in faster than they could flee. The forest had given birth to its horrors, and they were too late to stop. She yanked Ethan to the left, diving through an archway that opened into another tunnel. The air grew dense, and the hollow laughter of those who once lived here echoed off the walls. "Make it stop!" Ethan shouted, terror-stricken. "Hold on!" Rachel gasped, heart pounding. But they were trapped in an endless nightmare, and every new chamber revealed more horrors, more fallen souls. Then, shimmering in the dim light, something caught her eye, a rickety wooden door, locked tight with rusted chains. A glimmer of hope surged. What lay beyond could be a way out, a final escape from this web of darkness. Without hesitating, she ran for it, desperation igniting every ounce of energy she had left. But would the door hold the answer, or lead them into something far worse? Just as she reached for the chains, the shadows surged around her, drowning her hope in a wave of despair. "Mom, please!" Ethan's voice echoed, but it was blurred, dimmed by an eerie fog that filled the space. "Something's wrong, Rachel." A whisper lingered in the air, sending chills down her spine. She hesitated over the door, heart racing. What if this was not the escape she hoped for? What if opening it meant awakening something darker than the shadows around them? With shaking hands, she unlatched the chains, feeling their weight pull down her resolve as she prepared for the unknown. What secret lay behind the door, and was it the key to their salvation or their ultimate demise? Her fingers trembled as she pulled at the last lock, the chains falling away with a clatter that echoed ominously in the dark. The rickety door groaned as Rachel pushed it open, a thick cloud of musty air billowing out, carrying the scent of long-forgotten despair. "Mom, don't!" Ethan cried, his wide eyes filled with dread. Ignoring her son's warning, Rachel stepped through the threshold. The room beyond was dimly lit, revealing dust and decay in every corner. Shelves lined the walls, crammed with rusty tools and tattered books that spoke of rituals long abandoned. Each step she took raised motes of dust that danced in the trembling light, swirling as if alive. "What is this place?" she muttered, heart pounding in her chest. There was something suffocating here, a weight that pressed down on her shoulders. Ethan's small voice broke the tension. "Mom, I don't like it here." As she turned to comfort him, a chilling breeze swept past, wrapping around her like icy fingers. It seemed to whisper her name, beckoning her deeper into the shadows. Rachel shook her head, focusing on her son, but the door squealed shut behind them, sealing their fate. "Ethan, we need to find another way out," Rachel said, her voice barely above a whisper. Panic fractured her thoughts. They moved further into the room, searching for anything that resembled an exit. Tension crackled in the air, a sense of being watched humming along her skin. The shadows shifted, curling closer with every passing second. Suddenly, she stumbled upon an old mirror partially hidden behind a pile of decaying wood. As she approached, the surface shimmered, rippling like disturbed water. Her own face stared back, but it was not quite right. The image shifted, twisted, and warped. Ethan squeezed her hand, fear palpable in his eyes. "Mom, it's not safe." Ignoring the unease growing in her gut, Rachel leaned closer. A faint whisper crawled from the depths of the mirror, pulling at her curiosity. "Help me." The plea was thin, almost fragile. "What do you want?" Rachel asked aloud, her voice trembling as if in response. The mirror darkened entirely before illuminating again, revealing a scene. A family trapped and scared just like them. The irony gripped her heart. They were just like any other family, she realized, before the shadows had consumed them whole. "Mom, we need to go," Ethan shouted, shaking her. But she was entranced. "Where are they? What happened?" The whisper grew louder, pressing at her mind. "Find the rules." It echoed, dark and heavy. A tremor shook the floor beneath them, and Rachel felt her resolve begin to crumble. Fear clawed its way back. "We have to leave now." She grasped Ethan's hand tightly, pulling him toward the door as it rattled ominously in its frame. The mirror emitted a final scream, shattering into 1,000 shards, each one reflecting a fractured reality. The room quaked, and she stumbled, almost losing Ethan's grip. They staggered back as the shadows surged forward, a menacing tide threatening to drown them. "Run!" she shouted, adrenaline fueling her legs as they barreled toward the door. But the entrance pulsed with a heavy darkness, like a living entity refusing their exit. The overwhelming presence of the shadows pressed against them, threatening to pull them back into the void. "Mom, they'll get us," Ethan cried, tears streaming down his face, his small body shaking uncontrollably. With a burst of raw panic, Rachel yanked the door open, throwing them both into the narrow hallway beyond. The world outside felt like toxic air, heavy and suffocating with the fear of what lay behind. The echoes of that whisper hung in the air. "Find the rules." She turned, peering back into the darkness. What rules? The words hung between them, pregnant with foreboding, a question unanswered. She clutched Ethan close as they ran, each step a desperate prayer for safety. The shadows were still close on their heels, whispering the dreadful secrets of the depths. As they sprinted down the hallway, the walls began to close in, their grip tightening around them, a physical manifestation of every horror that had ever lurked in darkness. Determined not to succumb, Rachel glanced back at Ethan. Whatever happens, we stay together, okay? He nodded, but his eyes were wide, reflecting a fear that had long since taken root in their hearts. But the question loomed larger in her mind, one that threatened to unravel her tenuous grip on hope. What rules shouldn't they have broken? Fear surged through her. They had to find answers before it was too late, but what if finding them meant diving even deeper into the abyss? The hallway was narrow, a constricting tunnel that seemed to stretch endlessly in both directions. The walls pulsated as if they were alive, breathing in sync with Rachel's ragged breaths. Ethan's tiny hand felt clammy in hers, a grim reminder of the danger lurking behind them. Keep moving, Rachel urged, her voice a fierce whisper. Each footfall echoed, mocking their escape as shadows flitted on the edges of her vision, taunting her. Suddenly, a loud crash reverberated from down the hall, forcing Rachel to stop. Her heart pounded wildly, a drumbeat of dread. Ethan clung to her side, eyes wide and shining with fear. What was that, Mom? I don't know, she replied, looking over her shoulder. The corridor seemed to shimmer with an unholy light, casting strange shapes that twisted and curled. But we can't stop. They turned and continued, stepping over uneven floorboards that creaked ominously. A cold sweat broke out on Rachel's skin. Something about the place felt alive. The whispers sharpened, transforming into urgent cries. Help us, Mom. Ethan's grip tightened. It hurts, I can feel them. Rachel felt a sudden chill crawl up her spine. Panic surged. What do you mean? She faced him, her heart racing. Behind us. Ethan's voice shook. She turned, eyes wide, expecting to see only shadows. Instead, she was met with an overwhelming darkness pooling and swirling, formless yet alive, circling them like a predator ready to strike. Run! Rachel cried, pulling Ethan along as the darkness advanced, hungry to engulf them. The floor throbbed underfoot, a malevolent heartbeat that quickened their pace. They barreled through the hallway, desperate for an exit, but there was only more darkness. A door loomed ahead, cracked and peeling, a stark contrast against the shadowy walls. There, she shouted, pushing through the pain in her chest. With a swift motion, Rachel flung the door open, yanking Ethan inside. They stumbled into a small room, dimly lit with flickering candles. The shadows flickered along the walls, painting grotesque images that danced with sinister glee. What is this place? Rachel breathed, fear suffocating her. Shelves lined the walls, filled with jars that glimmered ominously in the candlelight. Each jar contained something strange, pulsing shapes that seemed to squirm and writhe. Ethan stepped back, his face pale with horror. Mom, I don't like this. A shadow leaped off the wall, darting toward Rachel. She gasped, throwing out her hands in defense, heart racing. But it melted away before her, revealing a torn and battered book that had fallen from one of the shelves. What is this? Rachel whispered, reaching for it with trembling fingers. The moment she touched the cover, words spilled forth in a low, guttural voice. To survive, you must obey the rules. Ethan's eyes were wide with fear as the shadows slithered in closer. What rules, Mom? Suddenly, the room darkened, the candle flames flickering out one by one until they were plunged into total blackness. Find the rules. The voice echoed again, deeper and more urgent. Rachel felt a coldness wrap around her, pulling her back toward the shadows. Mom, we have to go. Ethan cried, the tremor in his voice slicing through the night. But Rachel was frozen. Wait, there was a promise hidden in those words. She had to know. We need to find out what these rules are. Maybe they can save us. Before she could finish, a hiss filled the air, sharp and biting. The darkness pulsed violently, an infected beast eager to devour them whole. The shadows were alive, every inch of dread inching toward her, engulfing daylight. "I can't stay here," Ethan screamed, breaking her trance. With a burst of clarity, Rachel grabbed her son's hand. "We have to keep moving, Ethan. We can't let them take us." They plunged into the darkness, their hearts pounding as they chased the flickering glimmer of hope. But the question hung heavy in the air: what rules waited to be uncovered, and how far would they be forced to go to escape this nightmare? As Rachel plunged deeper into the abyss, the shadows whispered back, "You won't make it out alive unless you learn the truth." The thick darkness enveloped them, a shroud of fear pressing close. Rachel could barely breathe, each inhalation filled with the musty scent of old wood and something else, something sickly sweet, like decaying fruit. The walls seemed to pulse with anticipation, as if the very structure of the building was aware of their panic. "Mom, I'm scared," Ethan whimpered, his voice cracking. A chill slithered down Rachel's spine. She could hear the echo of whispered voices, a cacophony that merged with the beating of her heart. "Me too, sweetheart," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. They stumbled through the darkness, her grip on Ethan's hand the only anchor in the swirling fear. "But we need to keep moving. We have to find those rules." "Why?" Ethan's voice cracked again, shaking with dread. "What if they don't help us? What if?" Before he could finish, a soft rustling filled the silence. It was a sound that made Rachel's stomach drop, the kind of sound that meant something was coming for them. She turned, scanning the darkness, pulse quickening. "We need to hurry." Heart racing, they stumbled through the oppressive dark, the sensation of being watched creeping up their spines. She could almost feel breath on the back of her neck, cold and malevolent. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught her eye. A shadow darted across the far corner of the room, swiftly replaced by a wide-eyed face that floated momentarily against the wall. Rachel gasped, yanking Ethan closer. "Did you see that?" But the room remained still, and Ethan's small hands squeezed hers tightly. "It's just the shadows, Mom. We have to find light." Nodding, Rachel steeled her resolve and continued forward, not knowing which way was out. The air thickened, tasted metallic on her tongue. "Mom," Ethan whispered, "what if the rules are really bad?" The question hung in the air. What if the rules demanded a sacrifice? The thought clawed at her, but there was no choice. They were trapped here, hidden in the depths of this nightmare. "I don't know," she admitted, turning another corner. The dark pressed against them, crawling closer, its breath hot and electric. "But we can't let them win. We just have to believe." Just then, a low growl reverberated through the room, vibrating in her bones. The shadows shrank and swirled, twisting around her like ghostly serpents. "Obey the rules or suffer the consequences." Rachel's heart thudded painfully. "Ethan, hold on tight." She pulled him forward, racing toward what she hoped was an exit. The growl morphed into a loud, mocking laughter that echoed against the walls, warping her thoughts. "Help us!" The whispers grew louder, desperate and haunting, increasing the sense of dread squeezing around her stomach. Ethan stumbled, and urgently, she pulled him close to her side. "We'll get out," she pressed, though she wasn't sure anymore. They heard another crash, this time close enough to send shards of fear creeping under Rachel's skin. It reverberated like an alarm, reverberating more than just their surroundings, an omen of what was to come. Suddenly, the candles flared back to life, casting flickering light across the room. The shadows shrank, but only to morph into grotesque forms on the walls, each face imploring her, trapped and yearning. "Mom," Ethan pointed, trembling. "What's that?" Rachel's gaze followed. On a shelf sat a new object, a shimmering key that pulsed with an eerie light. Her heart raced. Could that be what they were looking for? Would it unlock their escape? "Stay close," she shouted, stepping cautiously toward it. The shadows seemed to howl, thrashing against the light, angry and hungry. Was the key the answer, or would it lead to more horrors? Rachel's pulse quickened, the danger fracturing her thoughts. "Mom, look out!" Ethan screamed. A shadow lunged from the darkness, reaching for her. With a desperate lunge, Rachel snatched the key, feeling its power hum against her skin just as the darkness surged forward. Panic engulfed her as time fractured. Would they escape? Or was this just the beginning of a much darker fate? In the fleeting moment, surrounded by chaos, the walls echoed. To survive, the truth awaits what was the truth, and what awaited them beyond the door. Rachel's grip tightened around the key, its cool surface oddly comforting amidst the chaos. The laughter grew louder, a cacophony of mockery filling the air, twisting her thoughts. "Go," she shouted, tugging Ethan behind her as they stumbled toward the nearest wall lined with windows, desperate to see the outside world, desperate for anything beyond this nightmare. The growls intensified, clawing at her sanity. She cast a glance back, and the shadow that had lunged at her was now multiple figures, their forms twisting and merging, dark mouths stretching into cruel grins. Each face bore a look of torment, as if they were caught between worlds. Rachel felt bile rise in her throat. Out of instinct, Rachel turned away from the haunting figures. "We can't let them see us," she panted, pushing Ethan ahead as they pressed toward the window. The key illuminated faintly in the dim light, feeling increasingly heavy in her pocket as if it were a weight pulling her down come what may. "Mom, I don't want to be here anymore," Ethan cried, tears streaming down his face. She didn't want to be here either, could leave him behind. If only she could find the way out. Suddenly, a chilling wind swept through the room as the shadows recoiled, and Rachel seized the moment. "Look, light." She pointed to the expanding brightness outside, where the moon cast its pale beams onto a world that felt so close yet so unreachable. They only needed to break through one more barrier. Ethan started forward, but she saw a glint in the eyes of the advancing darkness. "No, stay by me," she screamed, jerking Ethan back. The darkness clung hungrily to the edges of the light, as if it could devour it completely. The whispers grew clearer now, a dreadful chant that sent a shiver racing down her spine. "One must stray, one must stay," they seemed to echo from nowhere and everywhere, wrapping around her mind, drowning her in doubt. "Mom," Ethan's voice trembled. "What do they mean?" Rachel's heart sank. She couldn't let him hear that doubt. "It's just a trick, sweetie. They want to divide us." She pulled him closer, shielding him with her body. "We don't listen to them. We follow the light." But as she stepped forward, the ground beneath her shook violently. Dust and debris fell from the ceiling above. Rachel stumbled backward, nearly losing balance. What now? Obey or suffer? The shadows hissed, their laughter morphing into shrieks that echoed through the room. They twisted and churned, reaching for both of them, and Rachel felt her heartbeat thunder in response. Rapid and frantic, drowning out all reason. Her eyes darted around the dim room, searching for any semblance of escape. And then she spotted it, a hidden door in the far corner, barely visible in the flickering candlelight. It was their only option. "Ethan, this way," she shouted, pushing him ahead of her. They sprinted across the room, the shadows howling in fury, pursuing them with a hunger that seared the air. "Mom, the key," Ethan shouted, glancing back. "I know," she yelled, resisting the urge to turn around. They could not stop. Not now. Rachel reached the door and flung it open, its creaking hinge protesting against the onslaught of darkness. She was hit with a wave of fresh, cold air, a sweet relief from the suffocating heat of the nightmare behind them. But as she stepped through, an overwhelming weight settled over her, a shift in the atmosphere that bled terror into her veins. The new room was barely lit and filled with fog that curled around their feet like grasping fingers. Ethan inched forward, curiosity sparking in his terrified eyes. "Is this where the rules are?" he asked, glancing around. Rachel kept her grip tight on the key. "I don't know, but the truth awaits," she murmured, stepping farther inside. Every instinct screamed at her to turn back, but as she locked eyes with Ethan, she knew this was their only chance for survival. Suddenly, the air sparked, crackling with tension as a dark figure emerged from the haze. It was massive, towering above them, its eyes glowing with a malevolent light. "You've entered the realm of the lost, and the rules demand an offering." Rachel's breath caught in her throat. "What offering?" she cried, but the figure was already lunging forward, shadows twisting around its form. What did they truly require? Would she lose Ethan? Would the truth fracture them even more? There was no way back now. As the darkness closed in, the room echoed chillingly with a single question. Who will you sacrifice to the shadows? Her heart echoed in unison with those horrifying words, and Rachel realized the worst obstacles were yet to come. Rachel's heart pounded against her chest, a relentless drumbeat of panic as the monstrous figure loomed closer. Shadows writhing around it danced malevolently, ever hungry. You've trespassed into our realm. It hissed, its voice slithering through the fog, coiling around Rachel and Ethan like a serpent. The rules demand an offering. Can be yours, or his. She gripped Ethan's hand tighter, desperation surging. The thought of losing him snatched her breath away. No, I refuse to play your twisted game. The figure paused momentarily, surprise flashing in its gleaming eyes. Rachel's fierce denial ignited a spark of hope within her. I'll find a way out. I'll never give him up. With a defiant shove, she pulled Ethan close, whispering urgently, we need to stick together. Whatever it takes, we won't let them take us. As the entity moved forward, shadows billowed in response, swirling faster, hungry for despair. Then you shall suffer, it growled, extending a dark hand. A horrid chill raced through Rachel, knotting her stomach, but she swallowed hard, forcing her fear down. Ethan, listen to me, she said, urgency lining her voice. We're gonna find the way out. We've got to remember the rules. What rules? Ethan trembled, gazing up at her with wide, frightened eyes. What do we do? Forcing her mind to clear through the chaos, Rachel fished through her memories, piecing together bits and pieces she had heard. Stay close. Don't wander. Whatever whispers to you, don't listen. The rules suddenly clarity struck. They want us to believe we're lost, that we have to pay but we're not. This is just a trick. The shadows paused, the oppressive air thickening with heated tension. They play games, you see, the figure hissed. You must offer what you hold dear. The more you struggle, the more it will cost you. No. Rachel's voice rose stronger now, her conviction steady. I won't lose anything about us to this darkness. We're stronger than that. Ethan released a sob, all the fear pouring out in that single exhale. I believe you, Mom. And then, ignited by a rush of courage, Rachel turned and charged into the encroaching darkness. The shadows shrieked, a cacophony of rage swirling violently around them as they fled deeper into the fog. The walls pulsed, matching the beat of her heart, but the world outside grew clearer with every step. Can you see it? Rachel shouted, fueled by adrenaline and pain. Just ahead, a pinprick of light flickered a guiding star amidst the chaos. Mom, I think I see it. Ethan shouted back, the determination in his voice fueling her desperate sprint. Together they raced toward the light, tearing through the fog, shadows clawing at their backs in a desperate grasp. With every inch they gained, the darkness bellowed in fury behind them. You cannot escape. You belong to us. But Rachel pressed on, bracing herself against the encroaching chill. They reached the doorway, the ethereal light spilling into the dim fog illuminating their path. Ethan, we jumped together. With a forceful push, she carried them both into the brilliant glow, shoving through the final barrier. They emerged, tumbling into an open field drenched in soft moonlight. The air was fresh, tinged with pine and blooming flowers, a stark contrast to the suffocating darkness they had just escaped. They lay there for a moment, breathless. Silence enveloped them, calm and serene. Rachel turned, looking back toward the shadows that loomed behind them. You will never have us, she shouted defiantly, a vow echoing into the night. A howl erupted from the forest, filled with rage, but it retreated into the darkness, unable to reach them. The forest would always harbor its sinister secrets, but no longer would it haunt their lives. They were free as the moonlight wrapped around them. Rachel pulled Ethan close, his warmth bringing a flutter of relief. We're safe now, she whispered. The rules cannot bind us anymore. In that moment, knowledge flowed into her heart. They would carry their truth into the world beyond the woods. They turned away from the dark shadows, stepping into the future knowing they could not be snatched away by fear or darkness again. Together, they would face whatever came next. And as they walked, hand in hand, sunlight began to break over the horizon, promising a new day filled with light. Don't let this ending fade. You need to subscribe now for more chilling stories just like this. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories. Share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second. Let's keep this community growing strong.